So let's talk about the slate. Who knows what a slate is?
The thing they use in the movies with they close it up.
Oh yeah, okay. So that little clacker thing, right? Like,
Yeah, what says action.
why do we want to use that?
You keep track of all your shots.
Yeah, okay. Could there be some form of organization? There it is, the slate, also known as the clapperboard, right? This is a smart slate. It's got time code locked to the camera. We won't be using stuff like that. But the slate is super, 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 super important to use. Did I mention how important it is to use?
Yeah, you said it's pretty super important.
It's super, 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 super important to use. Say that 10 times fast. So why is it so important? It serves multiple functions, but its primary function is to organize the production and keep the shots organized in post-production. Without this thing, without slating, you are setting up your post-production to go into overtime. You're setting them up to miss their targets. So why? Okay. So most people, how many people have shot stuff? Anybody shoot a short film or shoot anything?
Yes.
Did you use a slate?
I want to say yes, but the answer is no.
Yeah.
And that was not a good idea.
Right. So anybody who's actually doing this for real will have a slate. We will use a slate, because if I shoot a short film, like let's say the project you guys are going to shoot, may not be that big of a deal, right? If you have like a small amount of shots, may not be that big of a deal to keep track of. But what happens if I'm shooting a feature-length film where I may have 1,000 shots, and if I don't slate any of them, how do I know? How does the editor know what shot is what? They don't. So that means they have to, if they don't know who it is, what shot's what, they may have to get someone from set to come in and say, oh yeah, that's that shot, that's that shot. You start seeing now how this is very inefficient and it's going to waste time and energy, and also make people in post-production rip their hair out because they can't figure out what is what. So this is the primary tool we use, and it's been around since the beginning, and it will be around to the bitter end because it's the best tool to use. So what this thing's going to do, it's going to help us keep track of scenes, shots, and takes to be organized in post-production, and to help synchronize sound to picture when dealing with location sound. This organization will dramatically decrease the amount of time in editorial. I can't help but emphasize that word, dramatically decrease the amount of time it takes you to get something done. So you may be on set going, why are we wasting time to slate this thing? It's wasting so much time. That time you're wasting, and I'm not even going to use that word wasting, that time you're using to use the slate, it's going to pay off in big amounts when you go into post, because to know exactly what each shot is going to be a lifesaver. To know different takes. Remember we talked about the whole breakdown of films, and we talked about what's a film, what's the molecule or the atom of a film? Anybody remember?
The take.
The take, right? So shouldn't I have a way to be able to log and identify these takes so everybody knows what take is what? So this is the thing that's going to do it, the slate. So the way it works is basically there's a very specific way of labeling it and organizing it. At the beginning of each take, I'm going to put this thing in front of the camera before they roll. And the director's going to call roll camera. Camera's going to roll. The AC is going to say, scene 21, Apple, take 1, Mark, get out of the way. We're going to shoot that take. We're going to call cut. Camera's going to cut, stop recording. And they're like, okay, let's do another take. The AC is going to erase the 1 on take 1 and write take 2, come back, go, scene 21, Apple, take 2, Mark. That slate is going to be in front of every single shot. So that means, and it should theoretically be the very first frame that's captured. And you're like, well, why? Well, because when I go into the edit, because we're using digital cameras today, right? Everything is files, right? They're file based. I bring them all into Premiere. The first thing I'm going to see from each shot is the slate. It's going to tell me exactly what that shot is. So as the editor, I don't have to drag or hunt or anything. I'm just going to say, oh, there's shot 23, Apple, take 2. I know exactly what that is. It's on the very first frame of what you shoot. Nobody has to scroll for it. It's going to save your editor time. So we definitely want to don't roll the camera and then bring the slate in. Bring the slate up, aim the camera, roll, mark it, and then get it out. So it's really important to get that slate in the beginning, okay? So putting the information physically on it, then the editor can read it and go, okay, I know exactly what this shot is. The other thing that happens is that the AC is going to call it out. They're going to say, scene 23, Apple, take 2, mark, click. Why would they do that? Anybody take a guess? Interesting question, right?
You're asking
Seems,
why they label it?
why would they call it out?
Oh, in case something. Why would they call it out and not just label it?
Seems redundant, doesn't it?
A little bit.
It's not.
Is it because the slate is in front, and so when the editor's hearing it, they know what scene it is?
No, the editors can see it. All right, I'm just going to cut to it. Because what's going to happen is when we record sound is going to be recorded on a separate system. It's called a dual system. We're not going to deal with it in this class, but all productions, I'm doing a shoot tomorrow. The sound recorders is going to come in. They're going to have their own recorder that's separate of the camera. So when I call out the scene, I say, scene 23, Apple, take 1, mark. Guess what the microphone does? It records that. So guess if there's a problem with trying to synchronize a shot to a piece of sound, if I can hear what the title of that sound clip is, then I know what it is because I can't see it, right? So whenever you're doing sound, you just get in the habit of calling it out. And even if for now, we're not doing sync sound work, but if you're on a professional set, and you're doing sync sound, then you have to call it out. So that's going to help keep the audio clips tagged so we know exactly what they are. Now, I will tell you that most sound recorders with their today's modern recorders, they can actually program the name of the shot and the take and everything into it as they do. But this is just a backup in case what their metadata gets messed up, that we can know exactly what the shot is. Or if you're not so elaborate, you're using a Zoom recorder. Everybody heard of those, right? This will allow me to know exactly what the Zoom recorder, what that WAV file is on the Zoom recorder. I know what shot that belongs, what take that belongs to. So that's going to help that out. So that's the organizational role of the slate, to make sure we mark and tag every single shot, visual shot, every single audio clip has a tag on it, an ID tag. So when they're in the edit, they can find it. The worst thing in the world is the editor's sound being lost, shots being lost, everything being disorganized. Because what that means, when you're disorganized, it means it's going to take more time. When it makes more time, what does it cost you?
More money.
More money, exactly. Thank you. And that is the name of the game, being efficient as possible. So that's the one thing we're going to aspect of it, is this organizational thing. The other thing that means too is you're not going to roll continuously. You're not going to roll and just keep doing take after take, because if you do that, then you don't have those takes divided up. That means someone's got to go in later on and cut them up and figure it out. So if we're in a narrative world, which most of us are doing, I'm going to cut every time. Every time we're done with a scene, we're cutting the camera. We're not letting it roll. There are exceptions of that rule. We will sometimes say, let it roll. And then we'll mark it in the notes and everything, say, okay, we ran long on that. You're like, well, what about documentary work? What about reality work? Well, those worlds, yeah, they're not going to stop between takes. So they're going to roll the cameras. They're going to mark the sequence in the beginning of the slate. and then they're going to let it roll, and the camera may roll for an hour. But what I will tell you is that in the post-production in those worlds, the editors have been hired. They budgeted that time in to have them go through the footage and separate it and create sequences and everything. Their job in editing is to find it and separate all the shots. In the scripted world, that is not their job. It is our job to make sure all the shots are separate little clips that they can figure out later on. So they're two different worlds when it comes to editing. And the editors in those two different worlds are two different beasts. Reality documentary editors are not the same as narrative editors. They're two different worlds. So we're sticking with the narrative world for this class right now. So it's really important to cut the camera between takes and then start up, even though it seems like a waste, it's not. And here's the other thing I'll tell you. If you have to roll suddenly and you don't get the slate in on time, well, you can do the slate at the end. It's called tail slate. And you'll hear, like if you're on a set, you'll hear the AC like panic at the end of the shot when they're rolling camera and they're like, okay, we'll tail slate it. You'll hear the word tail slate it. Okay. And then the scene's ending and they're like, end scene. You'll hear the AC scream, wait, tail slate. And they'll run in and hold the slate upside down and then flip it like that in front of the camera. And then the camera will cut. And then we know that there's tail slate there. So it's so important that someone's life, someone's job is to be nervous and worried about the slate. That's how important it is on set. So I strongly recommend that you guys take advantage of this because it's going to speed up your process. If you do this, if you slate every shot, I will show you such a fast process in editorial to basically get your edits all lined up and get your bins organized almost automatically. But it only works if you do this part where you slate all your shots. So here's my little cheat sheet for you guys, how to use a slate. So I kind of talked a little bit about it, but this is going to be really important about how to mark the slate. So here's a yada yada about what it is, scene and takes. But here's what's important. So roll one, the roll thing, all slates kind of look like this. The roll is going to be what roll you're on. So back in the day, it was what roll of film is in the camera. Today, it's what SD card is in your camera, right? We're going to use SD cards or whatever compact flash or whatever you got. So hopefully you guys are only going to fill one card up, right? If you're going to do multiple cards, wow, it sounds like you're going to have a big project to work with. So if you just have one card, well, I'm going to put roll one here and say, well, that's the SD card number one that I'm using. If I happen to fill that card up and I put a second card in, well, I'm going to change this to number two for roll number two. Now comes scene, right? So scene is going to be what scene we're shooting in. So do you guys remember we talked about scene labeling? So again, it's right in here. So the very first shot that you shoot, say we're doing scene one, right? The first shot that we do is going to be labeled scene one, and I might put a take one there. The next shot that we do is scene one dash Apple. It's the alphabet now. We don't put shot one, scene one dash one. It's scene one dash Apple for the second shot. And then after that's Baker, B, C, D, all the way through the alphabet. And if you happen to be like Quentin Tarantino and you go past the alphabet, well, you add a second numbers and then it becomes AA, AB, AC. And if for some insane reason you get through it again, then it becomes BA, BB, BC. But if you're at that point, then your crew is probably going to kill you or quit or go mutiny because that's overkill. So this is the actual legit way that we mark stuff up. So very first shot, scene one, it's just one, and we'll put a one here for take one. Then it will be, and if we do this shot again, remember we talked about scenes, takes and scenes. So if I shoot, we do take one, or like, all right, let's do it one more time. It wasn't quite right. This stays at one. This becomes a take two, and then three, and we do as many takes as it takes to get this done. And once we're happy with that shot, we move on to the next shot, which then becomes scene one dash Apple. And this becomes take one again. And then we go through take one, take two, take three, take four until we're happy or the director's happy. Then we move on to scene 1B. And then we go again, take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4. Starting to see the pattern here? Pretty simple. So we need to keep track of all this stuff in order to be organized. So if you download this thing and kind of follow along with it, you shouldn't have a problem. This is the way it's done in movie sets. So you guys should do this, follow it the same way. Okay, so you can get pretty dirt cheap slates on Amazon. Let's see if this link actually still works. Hey, what do you know? It still works. It's the ones we use at school. $17 gets you a slate, an eraser, and 2 dry erase markers. Not the best slate in the world. This thing's not going to survive. Like, it's not built to take abuse, but it will certainly get the job done. So $16 for a slate there. If you can't afford that, you can use a paper slate. You can basically click on this link here and download this. And we've made a little paper slate that you can just print out on your computer, if it ever shows up on Canvas. Thank you, Canvas. So here we go, slate. You can just print this out. I've had some people print this out and then put it, seal it in plastic, and then use a dry erase on that too. You can, or you can just print a bunch of them out and use your pen and paper. So those are, 2 traditional ways. The legit slates like this one, these are like about $1,000. They're time code linked. They actually connect to the camera wirelessly, and the time code this will tell me exactly what the time code is on the camera, which is again useful for synchronization if all else fails. The other thing I want to talk about is the clacker. Why do we use this clacker? Why it's important? This is the part of the slate that's going to help us with synchronization of sound. So remember I said that in production, camera is going to record the visuals. The sound recorders is going to record the audio separately, right? So they're going to be 2 separate files. One's going to be video, one's going to be audio. When I go into Adobe Premiere, I got to put them together and synchronize them, make sure they're right. So normally on professional film shoots, TV shoots, we're using something called time code, which is the time code you're seeing right there on the slate. I have these 2 little boxes. They're called locket boxes. And these things generate the same exact time code. They're synchronized together wirelessly. They tell me the exact same time code down to the frame. And I plug these into the camera and into the recorder, and it slaves them to the time code. So the whole process of synchronizing these devices should just work with time code, and they should automatically be synchronized. So when I bring them into Premiere, I just say, hey, Premiere, synchronize these 2 clips, the audio and video, and boom, it does it automatically. That's how it is today. But this slate will allow me to have a backup way of syncing, because time code is part of machines, and machines can fail. And so if the time code is drifting, or it gets kicked out or gets out of whack, and that's my only way to synchronize stuff, well, now I've got a whole bunch of angry editors who are hand synchronizing everything with no guide, and their life's going to be miserable. They're going to go into overtime. It's going to make me cost money, and I'm going to probably slip my schedule. So the slate allows me to synchronize by 2 ways. The clacker is going to give me a visual reference point of sync, and it's also giving me an audio reference point of sync. So it's got these 2 little, white and black stripes there. When I raise it like this, and when I bring it down like this, there's going to be a point where it closes perfectly and those lines form. That's going to be the visual cue of a moment where a frame is going to be a sync point in frame. At that exact moment, if I close it right, the clacker is going to make that clack. It's going to go clack. So when I go, my time code is totally off, or if I'm using a DSLR like you guys are, and I have no time code, when I see that clapper close all the way perfectly on one frame, I go into the audio file and I hear that clack, I know if I take the waveform of that clack and line it up with that clapper closing, I've just synchronized my 2 clips. So it's a backup way of synchronizing. So really important to clack. So that we talked about that. We talked about the paper slate. So there's a couple other cool things you can do. So we've been more and more starting to use phones and tablets as slates, smart slates. So there's a couple pieces of software out there you can use. The one that most people use, including myself, and of course it's going to be the most expensive one, is this thing called Movie Slate. Not cheap. In fact, now they force you to do a monthly subscription to it. But this will synchronize to my camera, and automatically, as I fill the metadata in here on certain cameras, like my Red camera, it will update all the metadata in there. It will get the time code from my camera, and basically everything will be in sync. So that's one of the functionalities that it does. The other thing it also does is it will generate reports. So it'll give me a shooting log, a report of everything that I've done. And it also will work within the different departments. So somebody in the audio department will have this running on their iPad. Somebody in the scripting department has this on theirs. They all synchronize wirelessly together and keep everybody on the same page as far as information, time code, shots that are good, shots that are bad. All that information can be tracked in metadata. I'm going to say, up front that this is probably overkill for you guys in the beginning, but this is where this technology is going down the road. So lots of companies are using this thing, and it's pretty elaborate, but super efficient. Maybe not great for small little school projects, but certainly can help out a lot in a feature production. So, but that's the expensive one. So that's not cheap. It's probably going to be like, now it's a subscription. I think it's $50 at least to own the app, and then another $30 a month just to get it unlocked for everything. So not good for students, but if you actually get your first gig and you're doing a short film or a feature-length film, might not be a bad investment to help keep everybody organized. So that's the expensive toy. This one here is the free Slate version. This one only works on iPhone, but it's still pretty useful. So here's DigiSlate, and so kind of does, it doesn't have any of the fancy organization remote stuff, but it basically is a slate where I can click it and get, instead of having to have a printed slate or having a physical slate, I can have this in my phone and just whip it out whenever I need it, or have it on an iPad or something. There's Slate app on Android too, also known as Clackboard, which I haven't tried because I don't have Android, but this one seems to work pretty good too, from what I've heard. These are all fun to play with. So you can literally so if I wanted to, I could just have this on my phone. So I've got a slate here, and then if I'm ready to do the scene, I'm gonna turn my sound on. I could, instead of having a real slate, I can have this, and it starts doing the time code, and then I can hit cut, and it will generate a report for me if I want. But now I've got a slate in my pocket if I want. So these apps can be really fun to use, and these will automatically update the takes and the counts and everything. That's what's kind of cool about it. I don't have to keep track of it. Once I put the scene in, it will upgrade the takes, and then when I say, okay, I'm done with scene one, let's go to scene one Apple, I just hit next, and it'll automatically increment on the fly for me. So it's kind of helpful for doing stuff like that. And it's tiny. Obviously, it's small to work with on a phone, but if you have an iPad or a touch tablet, you can have a bigger slate. And they actually make slates that put iPads in them that actually use this software and all work in conjunction. So it's kind of fun to do that. But you don't have to go down that route. You can literally just print out the piece of paper that I have, the paper slate, and use that if you want. So there's a lot of cool options here. And the point here is that there are plenty of options here that you want to use to slate. And so there should be no excuse whether, I don't have a slate, I can't afford a slate, or, even if you just use the paper slate and get it over with, that'll be helpful. Because the key here is, again, to be organized, because the more organized you are during shooting, the better post-production experience you're going to have when we go into editing. So I got two quick videos I want to show you.